Hey everybody, Alex here from Tiger Skull RPG, and today I'm going to do a video where I break down some of the game mechanics behind the Legions of Cursed Death. This is for DMs. I try to do as much writing as I can to explain everything, but sometimes there's only so much space, and it's just good to chat about it. So we're going to cover how I imagine the gameplay might unfold, and what all the items are used for, and the abilities and all that stuff. So here we go. This is it. And we're going to cover the crawling death as well, because they're a big part of the kit. But yeah, so here they are. Let's get into it. I like to start with the items. So the first item we have, I'll frame in on this. This is Death's Curse Blade, and I'll just read the description here. Jagged shards of rust burst on impact. The core's edge slashing crude and necrotic. So yeah, slashing, necrotic damage. You have to look out for that. I've got that underscored there. This is a magic item, as highlighted by the green. 4 pounds, 950 gold is the value of this sword. And this is just a D4, or sorry, a D8, and but you can do D10 damage. Because it's a versatile blade, so you can hold a two-handed, and maybe I'll use the two-handed. I could have used the two-handed icon here. Maybe I'll update that. But it says on the back here, and if you're familiar with D&D rules, then you understand how the versatility works. Same as your typical longsword. So yeah, it's nothing really to memorize there. Anyway, on the back of the card, it reads, "Once a blade of regality, the cursed blade's tarnished edge now gives force to dark aim. Years unkept leave the sword heavily wrought. Time ought to have granted it rest long ago. However, necrotic powers bestowed unto the old cursed blade ensure unending yieldty." Okay, so a little bit of flavor at first. And let's get into the mechanics. With each successful strike, 2 points of necrotic splash damage are released. The targets within a 5-foot radius are affected by this, including the original recipient of the melee attack. So you land an attack on somebody, anybody adjacent to him is going to take, or her is going to take 2 points of necrotic damage, and including the person who was hit by that one. So this is really kind of designed to, these characters are designed to kind of swarm you at close range, and so if they get close to you, then that's when they're going to do their an extra bit of damage, and you want to try to avoid that. But at the same time, you kind of got to get close to them to attack them, and we'll get into why a little bit later. So anyway, let's move on to the next item here. Death's Scrawl Blade. A warm agony erupts as the scrawl blade pierces the skin. Moments pass, and with a slow exhale, pain fades into elation. So, yeah, this is the thought behind this weapon, and we'll get into the details. It's just, but at a high level, you take this thing. It's almost like an EpiPen, and if it's full of blood, you're going to stab it into yourself and do some healing. But it's going to do a little bit of damage, a little bit of piercing damage at first, but overall you should gain healing. So it's something you want to do before you're on your last leg, in case you die. But I mean, there's mechanics here for becoming undead, but I don't know if you want to becoming undead, so that's how you play it. And let's get into it here. Okay, again, magic item, 1.5 pounds, another 900 gold. It's kind of a weird, rare item. Does 1d4 damage, same as like a dagger or something like that. And then also can, if it's empty and you're extracting blood from somebody, you'll do 4d4 damage, and that will let you know how much of their life force you've taken. Okay. Okay. The dead long for the taste of the living. The scroll blade, enchanted in such a way as to bring life to the dead, requires the extraction of blood from any living creature, so long as the blood is still warm. The way I would interpret that is like even if something has maybe been killed recently, as long as their blood is still flowing warm, then you can extract from that human or creature or whatever the hell it is. As a target figure is pierced by this full scroll blade, so this is when it's it looks like it does in the picture, and you've got full of blood. Uh, do 1d4 damage like you would with any kind of small stabbing weapon. Once damage is absorbed, the target then gains 1d4 in health points over the following 4 actions. So, yeah, so one action you stab it into yourself or any other figure, an ally or whatever, and then over the next 4 actions, so I guess 2 turns or whatever. Yeah, you keep rolling and you start gaining health at that point, and because this thing kind of takes effect over time, healing over time is the idea here. On empty, 4d4 health points are extracted from target figure. On hit, any other damage modifiers are ignored, so you don't get to really apply buffs because it's kind of extracting blood. It's not really going to be if you have maybe some kind of, I don't know, some kind of +2 or something. Not going to really add that. I don't want to say never, but I don't know. I'm just leaving it to. I mean, you've only got so much space here. Maybe if you've got some sort of weird blood extracting spell that makes sense, I would go ahead and apply it. But generally, this isn't really a piercing attack per se that's doing the damage, so that's why I removed the modifier. This item can be used to restore health points from 0, unconscious or otherwise. So yeah, so even if you're just full on dead, it's gonna restore your health. Okay, so that's pretty dope. It's kind of like a Phoenix Down a little bit if you've played Final Fantasy. So it's a good thing to have. Next, the Death's Defender, 7 pounds, 2.5k gold. This is the most valuable of the 3. By the dark wizardry that wards the macabre shield, evil lives on and on. AC +2. The living will bleed when the moment comes, and the dead will come to take your soul away. The dark ward placed upon the shield enchants the legion of cursed death in a blackened shroud. The bearer of the shield is granted an aura of protection as it is equipped to the arm. All non-physical damage totaling 6 or less that would be received in combat is negated entirely by the aura. So, okay, so this kind of acts as, small, there's an aura around you, and minor damage coming at you that is non-physical is just going to be absorbed by this aura. So you can basically, if you're trying to take, trying to cast, weak pot shots at a legion from far away, or even nearby, I suppose. Yeah, those aren't going to really make it through, and it kind of steers you into engaging physically with these guys, which is, their whole kit is designed around getting close to them and being forced to, fight them at their advantage, right? So you got to deal with that. Okay, the Legion of Cursed Death, medium undead lawful evil. Let's get into these units here. Okay, these, I had written. Well, okay, I'll get to the ability scores in a second. I should read out the armor class 14, leather plate armor. Yep, hit points. These guys are level 8 and have not a ton of hit points compared to most characters that I release. I think if you've got a strong fighter, you can hit them in a 2 or 3 solid attacks, solid connections. So they're really, you know, designed to be fought in a group, and you know, if you encounter one, it's probably not too big of a your party probably isn't too worried about it. So anyway, they're not super fast, regular typical speed, 30 feet. Okay, yeah, so the strength and dexterity, constitution are kind of in line with a fighter. And then the intelligence, wisdom, and charisma, I believe I took from the reanimation master's sheet. He's got an ability that can turn figures of, I believe, a low intelligence into a legion of cursed death. And I had listed some stats in there months ago, so I went back and had a look and see what I wrote, and I made sure that these guys, you know, actually lined up with the stats. So their intelligence and charisma is pretty low, and the wisdom is kind of an assumption as to like where the character was before they became in the legion. So, or they became a legion of death. So I mean, if you really wanted to, you could push and pull these scores around based on, you know, if maybe a figure that's in your campaign had certain ability scores. Definitely feel free to fill those in if you want them to then become a legion of cursed death. Okay, you cannot charm them. Ladies, they don't really get exhausted like most undead. They're not affected by poison and necrotic. You can't do necrotic or poison damage. Passive perception, dark vision. These are similar with a lot of undead figures. They speak common and abyssal, so they're communicating with. They can communicate with your party, and although I doubt they really would. And take orders from, you know, a deathless apprentice or something like that. And then there's a level 8 challenge. So, okay, let's get into some of the body here. Lambs of men slain yet serve a purpose. That grim purpose, to execute the orders of the evil master that has bound them so. So few souls are truly sacred, and those that fall short in judgment shall eternally serve in the legion of cursed death. Okay. A taste for the living. Typically devoid of purpose, the legions of cursed death can be tempted by their hunger for the warm blood of the living. Units of the Legion of Cursed Death receive 1d4 health points per pint of blood consumed, so long it is taken from the living or recently deceased. So, like we were talking about before with that scroll blade and requiring warm blood, these guys, the idea is that they actually carry the scroll blade, and you know, they can use it to their advantage as well. They drink blood, and they heal from that. It's kind of a primary motivation for them. And we continue to explain that with blood sense. Units of the Legion of Cursed Death detect minor wounds up to 60 feet, sources of fresh blood 1 pint or greater up to 120 feet. If detected, the Legion of Cursed Death would be compelled to investigate the blood source. So if your party's walking around and they've taken some slashing damage or whatever, and they have open wounds, then you're more likely to encounter these guys. And yeah, if blood is spilled, then they're like sharks. They're gonna be able to sense that and track it down, and that's a motivation for them. Bolstered Death. Units of the Legion of Cursed Death receive a +1 AC bonus as they are adjacent to another unit in full Legion armor and gear. So you don't want to be where you don't want to be is surrounded by these guys close range. You don't want them to overcome you in that way. And you know, they all yeah, they're all buffing one another slightly. I'm thinking there's lots of, you know, their armor and swords or their shields are all you know, kind of working together in close range. Threatening remains. Once Once the health points of a Legion of Cursed Death have reached 19 or less, slashing damage totaling 10 or greater will dismember a Legion of Cursed Death, send them into a prone state, relegating them to a crawling death. So, yeah, once you get below 20, yeah, a nice strong slash of the sword, and they will become a crawling death, and it's and then there'll be a whole new kind of unit, I guess, and have their own stats, separate set of stats. So it's kind of fun. Undying Hunger. As a Legion of Cursed Death is engaged in combat, they will be inclined to devour their foes if they smell the blood of an open wound. So they yeah, if as they're fighting in close range, they may just stop to take a bite instead of pursuing typical combat with swords and shields and stuff. Okay, and I put a little flavor text down there to fill space. Actions. Curse the Dead. A Legion of Cursed Death may take one action to revive a fallen humanoid figure. Using Death's Scrawlblade, the blood of the living is injected into the targeted figure. After 24 seconds, that figure rises once again. Roll 4d4 to determine the health points of the risen. That figure now serves under the Legion of Cursed Death. So this is a lot like the ability that's described in the actual weapon above, except that when like these guys have a unique spin on it, where they can rise the dead. Or if you wanted to, you could extrapolate this ability into that item as well. Again, there's only so much space on these items, and so sometimes I'll elaborate more on these sheets, but it is slightly different from what's written on that card, and expect that behavior from these guys to be kind of resurrecting their friends, as they've been killed, or creating new undead as they encounter corpses and whatnot. Okay, Death's Curse Blade, +6 to hit, reach 5 feet, single target, one-handed, 1d8 slashing damage, and then like we were talking about, you can dual wield this thing to do 1d10, and splash damage is described here. So really just I really just add these because you need they have the +6 to hit stat that needs to kind of be described here. Defending Bash. A Legion of Cursed Death may perform a shield bash prior to attacking normally in an action. +6 to hit. Reach is 5 feet, single target, dealing 1d6 bludgeoning damage. If Defending Bash is executed, roll the following attack at disadvantage. Follow-up attacks may target a different adjacent figure. So we're just mixing it up a bit here to maybe do different, doing bludgeoning damage instead of slashing. And it's kind of like a multi-attack. So if you as a DM, want to target 2 people for whatever reason, you can use this Defending Bash. Essentially, your first attack is this bash. This bash does the bludgeoning damage, and you can switch targets and attack them at disadvantage. So it's all in all, it's not quite as powerful as just attacking with the Curse Blade, but especially two-handed. But potentially could do some good damage, and kind of opens up a few more opportunities to attack varied opponents. Okay, lastly, Death's Scrawlblade, +6 to hit, reach 5 feet, single target, extracting health points from target. On hit, deal 4d4 piercing damage. Healing target figure over time. On hit, deal 1d4 piercing damage to a single target. Targeted figure gains 1d4 and health points on each following action for the next 4 actions. So really, I'm just again, much like the Curse Blade, I just wanted to have the +6 to hit, but then also kind of list the stats of the item here as well, for quick reference. So it's kind of all in one place. It's something I've started to do when their weapons are used. When the items because I didn't always make the items to be actual weapons of the characters. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But when I do, I want to make sure that the characters have those the descriptions on their sheet. You know, I think it's just an easier reference than having to have those weapon cards handy, because you may have given them to the player, right? Okay, so that's it. That's basically them. You know, they want to attack, they want to get into close range, and you know, I'm realizing here that this devour, this undying hunger, actually kind of points to an ability that I'd listed on the crawling death. Where's down here? Gripping bite. As the crawling death has a figure restrained in dead hold, it may perform gripping bite, which is it's kind of like similar to a stab wound. I feel like I could dive into this even more and maybe add some healing mechanics, as if they're kind of really you know, biting and drinking your blood. And maybe I will in future iterations. But I mean, as it is now, they're pretty full, fully playable. And I'd have to, I think, make some space for that. But who knows? Who knows? So let's have a look here. This is the illustration that accompanies these guys. So the way I see it is they're kind of, I guess, this, you know, they're all, I just thought all these villains are kind of in this, you know, necromancer's tower. This, it just seems to get bigger and bigger the more I design these characters and thinking about new ways to frame them in an environment. And this one is like, I'm imagining like a bridge outside somewhere. And these guys are kind of guarding, you know, an entry point into the tower. So I just kind of pictured it as a modest tower at first, but I think it's, you know, someday I'm gonna really design the layout of the tower, and I think it's going to be a lot bigger than I originally thought. And here's a shot of just the background without the characters, so you can sort of see the environment that they're in here. There's, you know, this would be on the left, kind of the ramparts facing down, so maybe way off to the left, and down here there would be maybe that's where intruders, I guess, would advance from, and you know, the door going inside. And then here I didn't have a ton of space once I framed it on these characters, but I didn't want to have steps leading downward here, off to who knows where. I guess some interior. I mean, we'll get there. We'll figure it out when we get there. So that's them. That's the Crawling Death, or sorry, the Legions of Cursed Death. Just a fun squad to encounter in a large mass and just kind of mow them down. Send your fighters in, and yeah, they're annoying in that they heal themselves and revive themselves, and they're gonna try and drink your blood and all that sort of thing. So yeah, that brings us to the Crawling Death. This was the bonus release last month, and I'm gonna release, this is a little bit outdated now, because I'm going to add a couple more cards to their release in July. And let's talk about what happens when a figure gets chopped down to a crawling death. Okay, we've got the stat. Maybe let's talk about, should I talk about the items first? Maybe I'll just go through here, because the items aren't quite like the last ones where they have, you know, explicit gameplay mechanics tied to the characters. So okay. Yeah, Crawling Death, medium undead, lawful evil, just like the figures above. And they, I rolled these up as level 4s. I wanted them to be a lot squishier than your typical Legion, if you were to run into one. And again, they start at 19 health, because the rule we described above was that they you know, once a typical figure hits 20 damage or less, you can chop them up and they'll turn into crawling death. Okay, they got to crawl around now, and they've lost their shield as well, I should mention. So that buff is gone. Similar immunities, they're going to be treated as prone, so follow the D&D rules for prone mechanics. There, they're rolling attacks at disadvantage, that sort of thing. Condition immunities: frightened, poisoned, fatigued. Yeah, senses again: passive perception, dark vision. It's funny, there isn't charmed on here. I could add that, although I don't know. Go ahead, charm these guys. And the challenge rating is a bit lower. You only get 1,000 XP for defeating one of these guys. Yeah, and again, I guess I'll touch on the ability scores here. They're pretty much the same, but as a Legion, but they've lost quite a bit of dexterity. So, you know, not having any legs will do that to you. Okay, a blackened soul lies before you, death refusing to die. It inches forward, clawing desperately at the cold ground. The expressionless skull struggles on unrelenting. Devoid of hope or fear, the thing's only desire is to once again taste the rich blood of the living. It is a pity of fates that one might become a creature such as this. Okay, attack rolls against crawling death have advantage if the attacker is within 5 feet of crawling death, so that's immediately adjacent. Otherwise, the attack rolls have disadvantage. So this was taken from, this is yeah, a description of how prone works. I just wanted to have that there and handy. And because these guys, they may only have even one arm. This is just one depiction of them, right? They can be dismembered in any way, and they're on the ground. I felt they should make attack rolls at disadvantage. All right, so their actions, not as fancy as the other guys. Dead hold. As an action, crawling death may perform dead hold on target adjacent medium or smaller figure. The targeted figure must make an immediate strength, athletics, or dexterity, acrobatics, saving throw against DC 18. So it is kind of challenging. If failed, they are subject to dead hold indefinitely. So these guys are just going to hold on to you. Kind of sort of like any zombie movie you've ever seen. Figures in dead hold cannot attack, and their speed is reduced to 5 feet, so your movement is really limited there. If a crawling death takes damage during dead hold, the engaged figure may immediately perform a strength saving throw, DC 15 at advantage, to break free of dead hold. So I wanted this to be still an effort to disengage from the grip, but easier than the initial onset of dead hold. If somebody is kind of trying to help you out, I don't want it to be a given that just because somebody is attacking this figure who's grabbed onto you, that they just automatically let go, but it does increase your odds of getting out of this. So finally, engaged figures may expend actions to roll DC 18 strength saving throws to break free of dead hold. So yeah, once you've got this guy attached to you, every time you've got an action, you can retry that. You can retry your original saving throw in a way to shut these guys off you. But at this point, it's a strength check and not a dexterity check, because the way I see a dexterity check is that you've kind of like dodged out of the way, whereas at this point they're already latched on, so I don't know that you can just kind of dash out of there. You kind of have to fight them off using strength. Okay. So that's annoying. So that's the most annoying thing that they can do, I think, is their dead hold. And then gripping bite, which I alluded to earlier. They're gonna do some piercing damage, bite onto you, and yeah, play that out how you would if you want to add, if you, you know, they've drawn blood and they're drinking your blood and that sort of thing. And I don't know, have fun with that. Um, Death's Curse Blade. +4 to hit, reach 5 feet, single target, 1d8 slashing. So when I copied it here, I removed the two-handedness from it because I think imagining somebody on the ground with two hands on their sword trying to swing it, I just thought it seemed like just like I don't know, it just didn't seem like it should be effective at all. So I see these guys kind of, you know, like in the image here, they're kind of bracing themselves with one hand and swinging at you with the other. And these the curse blade does necrotic damage. You know, splash damage is still there and everything. Same equipment and all that. Yeah, so that's it. That's kind of the guy. That's the both of them, and I highly recommend you know, having both of these on hand as you encounter a squad, so that you can, you know, refer to the abilities of one another as they, you know, pass into either state. Okay, so this was the card in the initial release, the Emmental Cheese, and I'll just read it out. Yeah, 1 pound of food, aged to a sharp vigor. The savory taste is met with the richest scent of tardy musk. 3 silver. So this is 1 pound of food in a day. You know, character in D&D really only needs to eat 1 pound of food. So, you know, as you discover this ration, that should take care of you if needed. Let's read the back. The old cheese reignites lost hope. Each crumbling bite rouses old memories. Visions of more tranquil times begin to flood in. Now, if only there were bread and wine on hand for the most triumphant of pairings. Well, luckily we have just that, because in the bonus release, we've got 2 more additions here. So now, if you're going to stumble across these 3 items in a campaign, in a dungeon, whatever you're up to, this cheese is probably the most, maybe the most of a safe bet, beneficial one to stumble on, because you just get the rations, and you get the food for your day. There's no strings attached. These 2, I wanted to attach some gameplay mechanics to, so that there's a bit of variety, as to what's happening when you're encountering these things. So first, we've got Legion's Merlot. 1.5 pounds. That's 25-ounce bottle of wine. Pretty typical. I actually looked up some D&D, like what the market value of wine is, and because this is aged for centuries, I kind of added a little bit of price to that. So these are worth 35 gold pieces. Okay. Legion's Merlot embodies the staunch piquancy of Moondrop grapes, matured in barrels of centuries-old oak. Okay. The once smooth glass now feels rough to the touch. It's a miracle the bottle hasn't cracked after years of tumbling about, unsecured. The wax seal appears to be intact, giving reason to believe the wine may still be potable. On consumption, roll a d4. On an outcome of 1, the figure becomes heavily intoxicated. Okay, role play that as you would, and assumes the following modifications to ability rolls for 1 hour. So, just an hour of drunkenness, if you happen to. The way I kind of thought about this is like, you may encounter several bottles of wine, and who knows, I mean, this is the Legion's Merlot. Who knows what percentage of alcohol is in these things or how consistent they are. This is not your traditional vineyard, I guess. So anyway, have fun with that. If you do get intoxicated, I wrote some things here. You can have charisma and constitution advantage, but you're going to lose dexterity, intelligence, and wisdom on any type of ability score related rolls. Okay, stale sourdough. Rough to the touch, the old bread has hardened to form a sharp crust. 1 pound of food again, and this one is the least valuable item. You know, it is stale after all, so it's worth 1 copper piece. I mean, good luck selling stale sourdough to somebody. For any price. Stale sourdough. The stale sourdough has a thin layer of dust, but appears to be devoid of mold. It can't be more than a week old, and should yet provide some degree of sustenance to one in need. On consumption, roll 1d12. Any outcome other than 1 satisfies 1 day's hunger. On an outcome of 1, the figure receives mild food poisoning for 1 hour. Constitution checks are rolled at disadvantage. So, actually, you know, I was looking up to see if food poisoning was a thing in D&D, and I couldn't really find anything, so I just kind of wrote a mild disadvantage. I mean, I just imagine how I feel after I, you know, eat something I shouldn't have, and usually it's like, yeah, I don't quite have the constitution I had prior to. So there you have it, okay? So I think the way I would play this is obviously, and if you're the kind of, not everybody plays like, you know, really to the T about, oh, I should eat food, I need to eat this amount of food every day, and usually the more casual games I've played, which is the majority, it's pretty much ignored, which is fine, because I think with these kind of items, you know, even though they're not like swords and magical, you know, these embodied items that have magic powers, I think they can be kind of used as interesting like quest requirements, like a key almost. You know, like a key opens a door. You may have an NPC that, you know, isn't going to give you information until you bring him, you know, cheese and wine, or just one or the other. You know, you can kind of use it in that way, which is how I would recommend it. So, but I did try to make a few some gameplay mechanics there as well, if you choose to play with the, you know, the hunger stuff. Okay, yeah, the crawling death. Let's talk about the illustration for just a bit. This guy, I pictured him outside, kind of in some sort of old wreckage near the tower, or where, what have you. There's, you know, barrels of fire burning. You know, there was some kind of war that had happened around here, some kind of battle, or yeah, I'm not quite sure, but it's not in a good state, and he's just crawling about, you know, trying to you know, follow his blood sense, and I would play him with, you know, again, I would try to keep this stuff in mind as well, I think, for optimal play. You know, he on his own, you know, is fine as a simpler character, but I think to really get, you know, have the most fun is to kind of play them, this as an extension of this sheet. So yeah, I hope you guys have fun with that. That's basically everything I have here. Yeah, this was my reference that I'd looked at as I was designing this character. There were a few shields that I felt were in the direction I wanted to go. This was the concept I eventually stumbled on. The sword was inspired by, you know, a few of these swords. I like the idea of kind of this warm colored blade. You know, usually I make kind of really cold steel blades, but I like the idea that these swords were actually once sort of like part of an army that had some nobility to it. So that's where I took inspiration from. A lot from this sword, actually. But I like that this had some inscribing on it. So if we actually look over here, the blade does have some, you know, maybe it's easier to see here. Just some symbology on the actual sword itself. Yeah, like as if it were, cursed in some way, by a witch or something like that. So, or something inscribed on here. Yeah, I guess that's pretty much it. I'll just say, thanks for all the support over on Patreon. Really appreciate it, guys, and yeah, it keeps me going. Really excited for the next release. This sort of shapeshifter character. I hope people like it. It's not quite as it's not like this your typical undead kind of minion, but still in the same kind of realm, like somebody who's kind of been overtaken by the reanimation master and forced to do his bidding. So yeah, we'll get into that next time though. Yeah, thanks again. And if you're new to Tiger Skull RPG, yeah, you can follow me on Instagram at Tiger Skull RPG or head over to patreon.com/Tiger Skull RPG. Okie dokie. Thanks everybody. Have a good day. Ciao.